So thanks so much to both of you. So Dan, you hear Vladimir Milov saying that the military flyover among Eurasian dictators is an ultimate sign of honor and respect, not I'm going to bring my uncontrollable neighbor in and show him my gun case and show him who's boss.
Yes.
That understanding the context of the person you're trying to intimidate is really important. Mm-hmm. He says that they categorically failed to do that. I know you just returned from Ukraine. So in that context, and when Ukrainians hear Trump talk about this warmth between him and Putin, what do they hear?
You know, I think there's a lot of consternation amongst Ukrainians right now, especially with the Alaska meeting. The flyover, certainly the Russian propaganda is saying that was a salute to Putin. I personally think it was an intimidation play, that B-2.
It was certainly intended to be one. It's what it was received as that matters, right?
I think Russian propaganda is spinning it, but I think Putin got the message. It was to start off the meeting that, the U.S. is here. That B-2 probably was the one that bombed Iran and took out their nuclear facilities. So, Russia has not developed any new weapon systems since the Soviet Union. That's why it was so interesting that Lavrov would bring the CCP USSR sweatshirt. I mean, they basically, one of the reasons they want to take Ukraine is because Ukraine was the best part of the Soviet Union. Most of the ships were built in Mykolaiv, all the ICBMs were built in Dnipro, the tanks were built in Kharkiv, Crimea. All of the best weapons from the Soviet Union were built, so they're trying to bring it back. But Ukraine is standing up because of all of this in the great intellectual capital and the great industry.
Yeah. So Congressman Kinzinger, when you hear Trump talk about the warmth between him and Putin, I mean, I was saying I immediately hearkened back to the George W. Bush moment. I'm sure many did. What did you hear?
It's just nonsense. It's just what I hear is a man that gets so incredibly manipulated. I mean, I'm sure to the extent his advisors actually advise him and actually prep him on anything, I'm sure the professionals were like, sir, he's going to come in and try to be very warm with you. That's a tactic. That's a trick. And Trump fell for it. He falls for it every time. Or there's just a natural affection. It's one of the two. But certainly it was not what was needed. We need to be clear. I personally thought the flyover was not to intimidate, but who really knows? But we need to be very clear to Russia. You have an opportunity to end this war, or we're going to double down with Ukraine. It's that simple. Russia is losing this war. They've lost 1 million people 3.5 years into it and have 20% of the country, when 1 week into this war, they had 30% of the country. If we would have been sitting in this position against Iraq, people would be say we're losing. So this is the time to step down extra heavy.
And Dan, can I just ask you about that? Because no matter where we are, and I mean, I'm loath to even say it, but it seems in one sense, look, you got to diplomatically try to end this, okay? However, it seems that everything that's being talked about is Vladimir Putin wins. The question is, by how much? If he's getting parts of Ukraine, then he's being rewarded for invading a country next to him. And there's been nothing on the table where he does, except for Zelensky, who at least maybe he's changed his mind now, but has always said no.
That's true. Zelensky has said no land ever. I do think that if you look at the style on Trump, that there's a lot of people that are upset with the way it was done. But the outcomes, I think, is what I focus on. That's what I talk to Ukrainians about is like, look, this is the first time we've ever had discussion, dialogue at the highest level for potential peace. We're closer than we ever have. The Europeans coming together like this has never been seen before. Ukrainians are so proud that all the European leaders came to the White House to show support. That's huge progress. And the key is the next step, we have either a bilateral, I don't think Putin will allow that ever, just like your prior guest said. Yeah. But I think we'll need to have a trilateral with Trump involved. It's the only way we can get to peace. But I think right now we're about to crush Russia, just like we crushed the Soviet Union economically. And with these new sanctions against India, the secondary sanctions, they've had an 11-fold increase in their oil imports from Russia. That's fueling the Russian war machine. We stop them; those go into effect next week. And we stop the fueling of the whole war, and that will crush Russia just like we crushed the Soviet Union.
Well, and let's see if they go into effect. I just say that because there's been a lot of talk about tariffs, et cetera. They don't necessarily go into effect. I hear you. If they do next week, we'll see. Congressman, I wanted to ask you something Trump had said about the start of the war, but he actually just was on a radio show a moment ago. The president was, and he was talking about the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and he said something that I have to play for you. You've got to hear this.
He's a war hero. because we work together. He's a war hero. I guess I am too.
Yep.
Nobody cares, but I am too. I mean, I sent those planes.
When I said at the top, Adam, that I wanted to mention that you had flown missions over Iraq and Afghanistan, I didn't think that I would be putting you in the position of having to comment on Trump calling himself a war hero, but here we are.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is just nuts. This is nuts, and they're going to find his people are going to find a way to justify this. Listen, when they were putting out something honoring the Army's 250th anniversary, they put out a picture of Donald Trump in his military academy uniform, which has nothing to do with the military except they drill you. This is nuts. He's not a war hero. You can like what he's done. That's fine. I hope he gets a resolution in Ukraine. But to put himself on the same level of people that have actually gone out and served this country, not claimed bone spurs, is an offense to anybody who served. And frankly, you just take somebody that served, calling themselves a war hero even, that would be inappropriate. For a guy that never served to say it, it's nuts. But they'll defend it. They'll find a way.
Well, you're probably right about that, but you're also right about something really important, which is the humility that defines a war hero, right? The humility of the fact that someone who's a war hero would never call themselves that. All right, thank you both very much. And next, walking on eggshells, incredible new details tonight about how Ghislaine Maxwell's fellow inmates are feeling now that she's in the same facility. Some will not even say her name out loud. Well, someone who has been speaking with them next. Plus, Trump's trade war hitting close to home for a member of the Out Front team, Dan Ives. You know his unique sartorial splendor, I call it. Now his new clothing business is getting pummeled by the tariffs. And Chinese President Xi Jinping seizing the moment as Trump is close to Putin, hoping for a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that Trump may well be handing him.